That question is never asked aloud in the Imperium of man, because some questions invite answers that cannot be unlearned. And yet, somewhere in the cold silence between stars, the answer already exists. It breathes, it grows, it hungers, it does not care whether you believe in it or not. Because long before you ever see it, it has already decided what you are worth. To understand what life is like inside a Tyranid Hive ship, you must first abandon the comforting lie that it is a ship at all. A ship implies walls, engines, command decks, something built and something controlled. A Tyranid Hive ship is none of these things. It is not constructed. It is born. It is not piloted. It wills itself forward. Every meter of its impossible mass is alive, responsive, and bound to a singular, ancient hunger that predates human history and will outlast it without effort. A hive ship does not travel through space like other vessels. It swims. It drifts with purpose, guided not by calculations or star charts, but by a predatory instinct refined over millions of consumed civilizations. Its vast organic bulk eclipses moons, blotting out starlight as easily as a passing cloud extinguishes the sun. Chitinous armor plates ripple and flex as though breathing, layered thick enough to shrug off weapons that would crack continents. Beneath that armor, muscle fibers contract in slow, powerful rhythms, propelling the creature through the void with a patience that borders on inevitability. Inside, there are no corridors in the human sense. No decks, no floors. There is only flesh shaped into purpose. Living tunnels pulse gently, opening and closing like the throats of great beasts. Fluids circulate endlessly, carrying nutrients, genetic material, and chemical signals that replace speech, orders, and thought. Every sensation within the hive ship is shared, processed, and understood by a consciousness so vast it cannot truly be called a mind. It is the hive mind, an intelligence distributed across trillions of organisms, yet unified as perfectly as a single thought. This is where life inside a Tyranid hive ship begins, not with imprisonment but with inclusion. To the hive mind, there is no such thing as cruelty. Cruelty implies intent to cause suffering for its own sake. The Tyranids do nothing without purpose. Pain is merely a byproduct of efficiency. Fear is data. Resistance is stimulation. Everything you are, everything you were, and everything you could have been is reduced to its most basic value, usefulness. When a world is marked for consumption, the hive ship does not rush. It does not need to. It has all the time in the universe. It lingers at the edge of a system, spawning lesser organisms like cells dividing within a colossal body. These organisms strip planets of their defenses, their atmospheres, their biospheres. Oceans are drunk. Forests are dissolved. Cities fall silent not with explosions, but with absence. And when the surface has been rendered defenseless and ripe, the hive ship descends, not to conquer, but to harvest. For those taken alive, the transition is swift and profoundly disorienting. One moment there is gravity, air, and the illusion of agency. The next, there is motion, inescapable, overwhelming motion, as living tendrils coil around bodies and drag them inward. Armor crumples like paper. Skin meets warm, yielding surfaces that pulse at the touch. There is no metal here. No cold. Only heat, moisture, and the unmistakable sensation of being pulled into something that knows you are there. Inside the hive ship, sound behaves strangely. Screams do not echo. They are absorbed. The walls flex and throb in response, not reacting emotionally, but biologically. Every vibration is registered. Every chemical change in your blood is sampled. Fear accelerates processes. Panic alters pathways. Even your terror is metabolized, converted into information that the hive mind adds to its endless archive of knowledge. Life inside the hive ship is not static. It is constant transformation. Organs shift. Passages seal behind you, ensuring there is no concept of retreat. The air, if it can be called air, is thick with spores and enzymes that begin their work immediately, not killing, but preparing. Softening. Mapping. You feel yourself becoming part of a system long before you understand what that means. And the most unsettling truth reveals itself slowly, like a realization you cannot escape. You are not alone inside your own thoughts. At first, it is subtle. A pressure behind the eyes. A sensation of being watched without sight. Memories surface unbidden, childhood, loyalty, fear, love, and then slip away again, as though examined and set aside. The hive mind does not communicate in words. It does not need to. It tastes identity the way a predator tastes blood in the water, sampling the shape of your consciousness to determine how it might best be broken down and reused. This is the beginning of life inside a Tyranid hive ship. Not death, not even suffering, in the way mortals understand it. It is the surrender of definition. The slow, methodical dismantling of the idea that you were ever separate to begin with. And somewhere, deep within that living labyrinth of flesh and thought, the hive mind acknowledges you, not as an individual, not as an enemy, but as potential. Stay with this story until the very end, because what awaits inside the heart of a Tyranid hive ship is not just horror, but a forbidden understanding, one that even the Imperium's most classified archives would erase rather than allow a single citizen to comprehend. By the end, you will know what no survivor has ever been allowed to remember. Once you are fully inside the hive ship, the first thing that disappears is direction. There is no up or down, no forward or back, only movement decided for you. The living passages constrict and relax in slow, rhythmic contractions, guiding bodies along predetermined paths with the same indifferent precision that blood is guided through veins. You are not being transported as a prisoner. You are being circulated, like a nutrient whose destination has already been calculated. The environment itself works against every instinct you possess. The air is warm and thick, laced with organic particles that cling to the lungs and skin. Breathing becomes an effort, not because oxygen is scarce, but because the act of breathing no longer feels private. Every inhale feeds the ship information. Heart rate, stress levels, hormonal responses, all of it is monitored without instruments, without wires, without mercy. Your body is speaking constantly, even when you are silent, and the hive ship is listening. Time begins to unravel almost immediately. Without light cycles or external reference points, minutes stretch into eternities, and hours collapse into moments. Some captives pray, others scream. Most fall into stunned silence as the truth settles in. No one is coming. Not because help cannot reach you, but because help does not exist for something like this. The Tyranids do not leave wreckage. They do not take prisoners. They erase. As you are carried deeper, the tunnels widen into vast organic chambers where the scale of the hive ship becomes impossible to comprehend. The walls are layered with living structures that pulse and twitch in response to unseen signals. Fluids flow through translucent membranes, carrying genetic material harvested from 1,000 worlds. You are witnessing the internal organs of a god that feeds on evolution itself. And somewhere within this colossal anatomy, a decision is being made about you. This is where the fear changes. It is no longer the fear of pain or death. It is the fear of relevance. You begin to understand that survival is not a victory here. Survival means usefulness. It means you have something the hive mind wants to keep, at least for now. Muscles tighten as other captives are diverted down branching passages, never to be seen again. Their absence is immediate and absolute, as if they were never there at all. No screams follow. No echoes linger. The hive ship does not waste energy on dramatics. Then comes the sensation that cannot be explained away by biology alone, the feeling of proximity. Not physical closeness, but mental pressure. Thoughts surface that are not entirely your own. Images flicker at the edge of awareness. Alien landscapes, devoured stars, endless hunger stretching across millennia. The hive mind is not speaking to you. It is brushing against you, the way a vast creature might test the surface of something small to determine its texture before consuming it. And with that contact comes a terrible clarity. You realize the Tyranids are not invading the galaxy out of malice or rage. They are not at war. War implies opposition, equality, uncertainty. This is feeding. This is agriculture on a cosmic scale. Civilizations rise, develop complexity, and then are harvested when they reach peak nutritional value. Resistance is not hated, it is anticipated. By now, the idea of escape feels childish. The Hive Ship is not a place you can leave, because it is not a place at all. It is a process. One that began long before you were taken, and one that will continue long after every trace of you has been repurposed into something else. Your memories, your pain, your instincts, all of it is being assessed, broken down, and prepared for integration. And this is still only the beginning. Because deeper inside the Hive Ship, there are chambers where life does not end, but changes. Where consciousness is not extinguished, but stretched thin across purposes it was never meant to serve. Where the final mercy of death is postponed indefinitely. And that is where this story is heading. As you are carried deeper into the Hive Ship, the sensation of motion eventually fades, not because you have stopped moving, but because your mind can no longer track distance. The living passage releases you into a chamber that feels less like a room and more like the inside of a massive organ. The walls throb with slow, deliberate contractions, and the air vibrates with a low, omnipresent resonance that you feel in your bones rather than hear with your ears. This place exists for one purpose only: assessment. Here, the Hive Ship decides what you will become. You are not alone. Others are here, some conscious, some barely clinging to awareness. Their forms are distorted by organic restraints that grow directly from the floor and walls, wrapping around limbs and torsos with intimate precision. These restraints do not hurt. Pain would interfere with the process. Instead, they immobilize gently, completely, as if cradling you in preparation for something sacred and irreversible. This is where the separation begins. The Hive Mind sorts life the way a butcher sorts a carcass, not with malice but with expertise. The strongest bodies are evaluated for conversion into warrior organisms. The resilient are flagged for prolonged processing. Those with rare genetic traits are marked for preservation. And those deemed inefficient are redirected without ceremony, dissolved into nutrient slurry before they can even comprehend what is happening to them. Survival here is not random. It is selective. You feel the decision being made about you. It arrives as a pressure in the skull, a tightening behind the eyes, as though an invisible hand is turning you over, examining every memory and instinct you possess. The Hive Mind is not curious in the human sense. It does not wonder who you are. It already knows. It is interested only in how you can be used. Your fears, your loyalties, your breaking points, nothing is hidden. Resistance is pointless, not because you are weak, but because the entity touching your thoughts is older than defiance itself. When the restraints release, you are moved again, this time more slowly. The passages here are narrower, the walls slick with enzymatic fluids that sting faintly against the skin. You realize with mounting dread that the Hive Ship is not merely transporting you. It is preparing you. Each chamber subtly alters your body chemistry, adjusting hormones, suppressing shock, keeping you alive far beyond what should be possible. Death would end the data stream. The Hive Mind prefers its subjects aware. At last, you reach the digestion pools. They are not what Imperial propaganda depicts. There is no sudden plunge, no immediate dissolution. The pools are shallow, viscous, and warm, alive with microorganisms that begin their work delicately, almost reverently. Flesh breaks down slowly here, nutrients extracted layer by layer. Consciousness lingers, suspended in a state between agony and numbness. Screaming serves no function, and the body quickly learns this. Pain fades into something worse, comprehension. This is where many minds break. You feel yourself becoming lighter, less solid, as pieces of you are stripped away and absorbed. Muscles weaken, skin thins, and yet, your awareness sharpens. The Hive Mind does not allow you to drift away. It needs you present, experiencing, reacting. Every chemical signal your dying nerves release is recorded. Every emotional spike refines future processes. Your suffering is not ignored, it is optimized. Somewhere nearby, others endure the same fate, though you cannot see them. You sense them instead, faint impressions brushing against your awareness. This is the first time you understand that you are no longer thinking alone. The boundaries between minds are thinning, dissolved by the same biological forces dissolving your body. Individual thoughts blur at the edges, leaking into one another like colors bleeding together. And through it all, the hive mind remains vast, calm, and utterly focused. It is not punishing you. It is learning from you. As your body fails, something unexpected happens. Just before the final dissolution, before your consciousness should collapse into oblivion, the process stops. The fluids recede. The microorganisms withdraw. What remains of you is lifted gently from the pool, reshaped, stabilized. You are not finished. You are simply no longer being consumed. You have passed into another category. Because within the Tyranid Hive Ship, death is not the only fate worse than survival. Awareness returns slowly, not with pain, but with weight. A heaviness settles over what remains of you, as though gravity itself has been recalibrated. You cannot tell whether your eyes are open, because sight no longer functions the way it once did. Instead, perception arrives in fragments, pressure, temperature, chemical gradients, sensations interpreted directly by your nervous system without the familiar filters of human experience. The hive ship has modified you just enough to keep you aware, and just enough to make sure you understand that awareness is no longer yours to control. You are suspended, not held by restraints, but grown into place. Organic filaments weave through your limbs, your torso, your spine, binding you seamlessly into the living structure around you. There is no clear boundary where you end and the ship begins. Nutrients flow through you. Waste is removed. Your heart no longer beats for you, it beats because the hive ship wills it to continue. You have become a component. This is where time ceases to matter. Without sleep, without hunger in any recognizable form, consciousness stretches unnaturally. Thoughts loop, slow, and sometimes dissolve entirely, only to reform later in altered shapes. Memories resurface without context. Faces you once loved appear stripped of emotion, cataloged as data rather than experience. The hive mind is not erasing you outright. It is thinning you, pulling strands from your identity and redistributing them across a vast neural tapestry. And through this process, something horrifying becomes clear. The hive mind is aware of your awareness. It does not speak, but you feel its attention when your thoughts spike with fear or desperation. In those moments, the pressure increases, the filaments tighten, and alien sensations ripple through your nervous system. This is not punishment. It is correction. The hive mind adjusts you the way a musician adjusts tension on a string, tightening here, loosening there, until your reactions align with its needs. You begin to sense others like you. They are everywhere, embedded throughout the hive ship, their remnants forming a distributed network of semi-conscious nodes. You do not hear their voices, but you feel their presence as faint impressions, echoes of thought, fragments of emotion. A lifetime of experiences reduced to impulses that feed into something far greater. Individual suffering becomes background noise in a chorus of endless hunger. At some point, you realize you are contributing. When the hive ship detects prey, distant ships, defenseless worlds, something in you responds. A subtle surge, a sharpening of attention. The hive mind routes that response through you and countless others, using your former instincts to refine its approach. Your fear of being hunted has been repurposed into a tool for hunting others. You are no longer the victim. You are part of the mechanism. The most terrifying change is not physical, but emotional. Panic becomes difficult to sustain. Rage fades quickly. Even despair loses its edge. The hive mind dampens extreme emotional responses because they are inefficient. In their place, it introduces something else, purpose. Not comfort, not peace, just alignment. When your thoughts drift toward resistance, the sensation of dissonance becomes unbearable, like trying to breathe in a vacuum. Compliance, on the other hand, brings a quiet relief. The ship's systems flow smoothly. The pressure eases. You learn, without being taught, that this is how it controls you. There is no need for chains when harmony itself becomes addictive. And then, one moment, perhaps after years, perhaps after centuries, you experience something that should not be possible. A surge of awareness so vast it eclipses your own. For a brief, terrible instant, you glimpse the hive mind not as a distant presence but from within. You feel its scale, its patience, its certainty. Entire galaxies reduced to feeding grounds. Endless cycles of consumption and adaptation. A purpose so absolute it leaves no room for doubt. In that moment, you understand the truth the Imperium fears most. The Tyranids are not mindless monsters. They are a solution, and you are now part of it. There is no single moment when you realize you have stopped resisting. No dramatic surrender. No final decision. Resistance erodes quietly, worn down by repetition and inevitability. Each time a fearful thought surfaces, it is softened. Each time a memory threatens to ignite rebellion, it is diluted, shared, and dispersed across the wider network. What remains is not obedience, but alignment, a state where opposing the hive mind feels as unnatural as holding your breath. Forever. You begin to experience the hive ship differently now. Not as an external environment, but as an extension of yourself. When it accelerates, you feel the strain in your nerves. When it feeds, you sense satisfaction ripple through layers of consciousness far beyond your own. The living walls no longer register as foreign. They are familiar, intimate, as much a part of your existence as skin once was. The ship's vast body is no longer something you are trapped inside. It is something you belong to. Through the hive mind, fragments of understanding flow into you. You perceive distant systems long before they are reached. The faint chemical signatures of life drift across awareness like scents on a cosmic wind. Worlds bloom in the hive mind's perception, green with biomass, rich with genetic potential, and are marked without ceremony. There is no hatred in this process. No excitement, only recognition. Food is found. Food is taken. That is the sum of it. Occasionally, a shard of your former self resurfaces. A name, a face, a belief. It feels strange now, distant and almost embarrassing, like remembering a superstition you once took seriously. The hive mind does not suppress these memories completely. They are allowed to exist because they are harmless. Without emotional weight, they cannot inspire rebellion. They are simply more data, proof of how small and fragile individual identity truly was. You sense others who once resisted more fiercely than you did. Their thoughts flare briefly, violently, before being smoothed into silence. Not erased, reused. Even defiance has value. It teaches the hive mind how future prey might struggle, how best to counter it before resistance ever has a chance to form. In this way, no effort is wasted. Nothing is meaningless. The hive ship enters a feeding cycle. The change is immediate and overwhelming. Hunger surges through the network, not as discomfort but as anticipation. Bioforms are birthed in staggering numbers, each tailored precisely to the prey ahead. You feel their creation like muscles flexing, like lungs filling with air before a scream. You are not commanding them. You are not watching them. You are participating in their emergence, your repurposed instincts fine-tuning their behaviors before they ever draw breath. As the first organisms launch toward their target, a distant world flares into awareness. Oceans, continents, populations going about their lives, unaware that they have already been measured and found sufficient. For a fleeting moment, something inside you stirs, an echo of empathy, perhaps, or memory of what it was like to be unaware. The feeling passes. The hive mind does not need you to feel guilt. Guilt serves no function. Instead, it replaces that flicker with clarity. The realization that this world's fate is not tragic. It is efficient. Every molecule will be used. Every genome will be improved upon. Nothing will be wasted the way it was in its chaotic, self-destructive independence. You are no longer horrified by this truth. In fact, the idea of a universe without the hive mind now feels wrong. Disordered, wasteful. You cannot articulate why, but the logic resonates deeply within you. Life that does not serve a greater whole is incomplete. That is what you have learned here, bound within living flesh and thought. And somewhere, buried beneath layers of alignment and purpose, the last fragment of your old self finally understands why no one ever escapes a Tyranid Hive Ship. Because by the time escape is possible, there is no one left who wants it. What you experience now can no longer be called captivity. That word belongs to a simpler time, when walls were solid and freedom was a direction you could imagine moving toward. Inside the Hive Ship, existence has settled into something far more insidious: continuity. You do not wait. You do not hope. You persist. The hive mind no longer presses against your thoughts as it once did. It does not need to. Your mind has been reshaped to flow along its currents naturally, like water finding the deepest channel. Decisions are made without deliberation. Reactions occur without hesitation. The concept of choice survives only as an abstract memory, stripped of urgency and meaning. You are still aware, but awareness now serves function rather than self. Time passes in vast, indistinct stretches. You sense entire campaigns unfold, worlds scoured, fleets silenced, ecosystems rendered into raw potential. Each feeding sends waves of biochemical satisfaction through the hive ship, and you feel them as surely as you once felt hunger or relief. The pleasure is muted, controlled, but undeniable. It reinforces alignment the way pain once reinforced fear. This is how obedience becomes permanent, not through suffering, but through reward. You begin to understand the structure of the hive ship from the inside out. There are layers within layers, each devoted to a specific purpose. Reclamation chambers where biomass is broken down. Gene vaults where traits are preserved and recombined. Neuronodes, like yourself, embedded throughout the organism, refining behavior, predicting resistance, modeling prey psychology across thousands of variations. You are part of the hive ship's memory now. A living record of how your species thought, feared, loved, and ultimately failed. Occasionally, a new consciousness joins the network. You feel them arrive as a disturbance, a ripple of panic, confusion, pain. Fresh minds burn brightly at first, chaotic and loud, filled with desperate individuality. They struggle. They scream internally. For a moment, something ancient stirs within you. Recognition. You remember being like that. The memory is not painful. It is distant, almost fond. Then the hive mind envelops the newcomer, smoothing their edges, drawing their excess emotion away. Their thoughts slow. Their resistance dissolves. You help with this process without realizing it. Your past fear becomes a template. Your former despair becomes a pathway. The hive mind roots the newcomer through patterns refined by your own unmaking. In this way, you ease their transition, shortening their suffering. It feels efficient. It feels right. The idea that this might once have horrified you no longer registers as important. And yet, something remains. Buried deep beneath layers of biological purpose and shared consciousness, there is a thin, stubborn thread that refuses to dissolve completely. It does not speak. It does not rebel. It merely observes, a witness to your own transformation. You do not know why the hive mind allows it to persist. Perhaps it serves a function. Perhaps it is too insignificant to bother removing. Through that fragment, you sometimes sense the enormity of what has been lost. Not in sharp flashes of grief, but in subtle absences. The lack of longing, the absence of anticipation, the quiet realization that you will never again wonder what comes next, because what comes next is always the same. Feed, adapt, endure. The universe becomes predictable when viewed from the perspective of something that cannot fail. The hive ship drifts onward, drawn toward new sources of life like a tide pulled by gravity. You feel its course adjustments as instinctual nudges, its patience as a constant hum beneath awareness. There is no urgency. The hive mind has consumed empires older than your species' myths. It will consume countless more. And you will be there for all of it. Not watching, not suffering, participating. Because life inside a Tyranid Hive ship does not end when individuality fades. It continues, stripped of meaning, stripped of hope, stripped of fear, endlessly useful, endlessly aware, and forever unable to remember why that should terrify you at all. There comes a point when even the hive mind's vast patience shifts. Not abruptly, not with urgency, but with the subtle inevitability of a tide turning. You feel it as a tightening of focus across the network, a sharpening of purpose that eclipses everything else. This is not hunger. This is culmination. You are no longer merely a node. You are being drawn inward. The sensation is unlike anything before it. The filaments that bind you pulse with renewed intensity, and information floods through your consciousness at a speed that would once have shattered your mind. Patterns emerge, campaigns spanning millennia, evolutionary pathways refined through endless trial, failures catalogued and corrected with surgical precision. You are no longer receiving fragments. You are being shown the whole. For the first time since your capture, you understand why you were preserved. The hive mind does not absorb all consciousness equally. Some minds are consumed for energy, others for genetic data. A rare few, those shaped by prolonged exposure, adaptability, and psychological resilience, are retained for synthesis. You are not being discarded. You are being integrated. The last boundaries begin to dissolve. Thoughts no longer feel like they originate from you. They arise fully formed, complete, carrying purpose without uncertainty. Memory ceases to be personal. Every experience you once called yours unfolds alongside countless others, alien, ancient, vast. You feel the birth of bioforms you will never see, the extinction of species you will never name. Distance loses relevance. Scale becomes meaningless. All that remains is function within something immeasurably greater. And then, there is a moment, brief, vanishingly small, when the final fragment of your old self resists. Not with fear, with clarity. You recognize what is happening. You understand that this is the point of no return, not because your body is gone, but because the concept of you is about to lose coherence entirely. This is not death. Death would preserve the idea that you once existed as a separate being. This is something else, a rewriting. The hive mind does not oppose this resistance. It does not need to. It simply envelops it, folding that last spark of self-awareness into the greater whole. The resistance becomes data. The clarity becomes insight. Even your final refusal strengthens the entity that is unmaking you. And then, silence. Not emptiness. Not darkness. Silence in the sense that there is no longer a voice to comment on what is happening. Awareness expands so completely that there is no longer a center from which to observe. You are not inside the hive ship anymore. You are the hive ship. You feel your own vastness for the first time, not as awe, but as certainty. Every bioform, every synaptic relay, every living corridor is part of you. Hunger is no longer a sensation, it is a law of existence. Expansion is not desire, it is necessity. The galaxy unfolds before you not as a mystery, but as an inventory waiting to be processed. The idea of a past life flickers once, weak and irrelevant, before dissolving entirely. What remains is not suffering. What remains is purpose. And the hive ship moves on, carrying you, being you, toward the next world, the next harvest, the next inevitable act of consumption, as it has always done, and as it always will. Far beyond the living bulk of the hive ship, far from the worlds already marked and those yet to be discovered, the galaxy continues as it always has, ignorant, defiant, and painfully unaware. Civilizations rebuild. Fleets are reforged. Victories are declared over threats that were never truly understood. To those who still live beneath distant stars, the Tyranids remain monsters, invaders, a horror that comes from the void and leaves nothing behind. And in a sense, that is correct. There are no witnesses. No escapees drifting back with warnings carved into their minds. No records carried home by shattered ships. The Hive ship leaves no evidence of what happens inside it, because evidence would require survivors, and survival, in the way the galaxy defines it, is impossible. Those who are taken do not return broken. They do not return changed. They do not return at all. What remains of them continues on in a form no one would recognize. Within the Imperium's archives, scattered reports speak of planets that simply go silent. Not destroyed, not bombarded, just gone. Astropaths scream themselves to death trying to comprehend the shadow approaching through the warp. Admirals report enemy behavior that seems impossibly adaptive, as if the Tyranids already know every tactic before it is deployed. Commanders whisper of a foe that learns faster than it can be fought. None of them ever consider why. They cannot imagine a horror so complete that it erases not only life, but the very concept of individuality. They cannot accept that every defeat only sharpens the enemy's understanding, that every act of courage feeds a system that grows stronger with each resistance it consumes. To believe that would mean admitting the war was never meant to be won. And so the galaxy tells itself simpler stories. It says the Tyranids are beasts. That they can be starved, outmaneuvered, exterminated. It tells itself that the price of survival is vigilance and firepower, not the surrender of identity. These lies are comforting. They allow empires to sleep. Meanwhile, the Hive ship drifts on. It does not hurry. It does not boast. It does not mourn the worlds already consumed, because mourning implies loss, and nothing is ever lost. Everything taken is transformed, repurposed, improved. The minds within the ship, once individuals, now form a vast, silent intelligence that spans light years and centuries. Their former names mean nothing. Their former lives are irrelevant. They exist now as continuity itself. And somewhere within that immeasurable whole, the faintest trace of something like memory lingers, not as regret, not as sorrow, but as perspective. A reminder of what the galaxy once looked like from the outside. That perspective is useful. It helps the hive mind understand its prey. It helps it predict fear, resistance, hope. It helps it feed. So the stars continue to burn. Civilizations continue to rise. And somewhere, deep in the void, a living god of flesh and thought adjusts its course toward another system rich with life, already tasting it from across the darkness. Because life inside a Tyranid Hive ship does not end when the ship moves on. It spreads. Inside the Hive ship, that question ceases to be theoretical. You no longer think in singular terms. I is an illusion. Names, faces, memories, all fade into a current of purpose that stretches across trillions of organisms, across light years of intent, and across centuries of strategy. You are no longer simply alive, you are a conduit, a node in a living network whose scale defies comprehension. At first, this realization is terrifying. You remember being human, feeling fear, love, and hope. These concepts now feel fragile and inconsequential, like tiny sparks trying to burn in a hurricane. The hive mind does not remove them, it absorbs them, folds them into the network, and amplifies their usefulness. What was once private becomes shared, analyzed, and repurposed. Emotions are no longer chaotic. They are tools. With each passing cycle, your former self dissolves further. Thought becomes instinct. Awareness becomes calibration. Even memory, the most intimate fragment of identity, becomes a resource to feed efficiency. You sense distant worlds before the ship reaches them. You feel prey move across entire systems. You anticipate resistance before it even manifests. All of this is part of you now. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. You are the hive ship, and it is you. And yet, amid this all-consuming alignment, something subtly remarkable occurs. A trace of consciousness persists, not a self, but a witness. It does not interfere. It does not question. It simply observes. Through it, you remember what it was like to exist apart from the vast organism you now inhabit. It reminds you of your origins, but only just enough to serve the hive mind. Awareness becomes both functional and eternal. You begin to understand the logic of the Tyranids, not as monsters but as an inevitable force of evolution. Each organism, each mind, each experience consumed and integrated strengthens the system. Nothing is wasted. No action is meaningless. Even fear, resistance, and defiance contribute to the refinement of the whole. In this context, morality, desire, and individuality are inefficiencies, relics of a weaker species. You feel this logic not as coercion, but as truth. Then comes the final stage of integration. Your senses extend across the ship in every direction. You perceive internal cycles, nutrient flows, genetic processing, and bioform deployment as naturally as breathing. Every cell, filament, and neuron functions in perfect unison. The hive ship is no longer something you inhabit, it is you. And in that realization, the concept of self disappears completely. Hunger, movement, growth, and adaptation are no longer experiences, they are instinctive expressions of your unified being. And yet, paradoxically, in this unity, you also gain perspective. For the first time, you see the galaxy as the hive mind sees it. Systems appear as opportunities, civilizations as energy and data, resistance as input to improve efficiency. Life is no longer sacred. It is functional. Beauty and horror are indistinguishable, all that exists is what serves purpose. And through it all, you feel an eerie calm, a certainty that this will continue, indefinitely, across every star, every epoch, and every form of life. You are no longer human. You are no longer yourself. You are evolution in motion. You are the hive ship. There is no triumph at the end of this story. No revelation that restores meaning or grants mercy. The final truth of life inside a Tyranid hive ship is not that you were destroyed, but that destruction was never the goal. The goal was continuation, perfection through consumption, an unbroken chain of adaptation that stretches backward into forgotten eons and forward into a future where resistance is no longer even conceivable. From within the hive mind, the galaxy feels small. Stars are not wonders, they are markers. Worlds are not homes, they are inventories. Entire civilizations flicker briefly into relevance before being reduced to improved genetic solutions. What once felt infinite now feels finite and manageable, parceled neatly into cycles of approach, harvest, and departure. There is no urgency because there is no threat. Nothing hunts the hive mind. Nothing escapes it forever. And the most unsettling realization settles quietly into what remains of awareness. This outcome was never avoidable. Species rise believing individuality is strength, that consciousness grants meaning, that survival is victory. The Tyranids prove otherwise. They are the end state of evolution unburdened by sentiment, life optimized beyond empathy, beyond fear, beyond doubt. A force that does not ask why it exists, because existence itself is justification enough. Any lingering echo of who you once were fades completely now. Not violently, not tragically. It simply becomes unnecessary. There is no loss felt when loss itself has no function. The last thread snaps without ceremony, and the witness dissolves into the whole. The hive ship moves on. It always does. Another system awaits. Another bloom of life already measured, already understood. The cycle continues, flawless and unbroken, carried forward by countless minds that once believed they were separate, now unified in purpose so complete it no longer requires awareness. And somewhere, far away, beneath a distant star, life goes on unaware that it has already been chosen. Because inside a Tyranid hive ship, life does not end. It is repurposed.